moment Mark Wahlberg stepped onto the View set that Tuesday morning, the energy in the studio shifted. The lights blazed hot overhead, the audience erupted into enthusiastic applause, and the familiar hum of daytime television settled into place. Mark walked out with his signature confidence, calm, grounded, a man accustomed to being both admired and underestimated. He was there to promote his latest film, a gritty action thriller already projected to dominate the box office, and for a moment everything felt routine, predictable, comfortable. Whoopi Goldberg greeted him warmly, her smile the steadying presence long-time viewers trusted. Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin leaned in with genuine excitement. Both clearly enjoyed having him on set. But the real atmosphere change came from the far end of the table, where Joy Behar sat stiffly, arms crossed, her expression sharp enough to cut through steel. Regular viewers knew that look. It meant sparks, usually the unpleasant kind, were coming. Joy had been in a sour mood all week, her social media feeds flooded with criticism over remarks she'd made on previous episodes. She was simmering, irritated, and looking, intentionally or not, for a target. And unfortunately for her, the guest in the hot seat today was not someone easily pushed around. "Mark, welcome back to The View." Whoopi began cheerfully. "We're thrilled to have you here to talk about this new movie. Tell us what drew you to the project." Mark leaned forward, completely at ease. "Thanks for having me, Whoopi. When I read the script, I connected immediately with the character. He's a guy with a complicated past, trying to do right by his family and make up for the mistakes he's made. It's really about redemption and second chances, things that mean a lot to me personally." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "Your journey, both on screen and off, has been amazing to watch, from where you started to the family man and entrepreneur you are now. I think a lot of people admire that." Mark smiled, humble but sincere. "Life's been good to me, and I don't take it for granted. I wake up grateful for the opportunities I've had and the chance to provide for my family." The audience loved it. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with genuine connection and laughter. It was the kind of segment producers dream about: charismatic guest, engaged hosts, positive energy all around. Except for Joy. As Mark spoke, her expression grew tighter, her jaw clenched, her posture rigid with impatience. She watched her co-hosts enjoy the conversation, and something in her seemed to snap. The pleasant atmosphere didn't soothe her. It irritated her, fueling whatever storm had been brewing beneath the surface. Finally, she struck. "Mark," she cut in abruptly, her voice slicing clean through the warmth in the room. "Can we talk about something real for a minute?" A hush fell instantly. Whoopi's smile froze mid-air, the warning signs clear on her face. Alyssa and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances. Even Mark, poised as ever, blinked in surprise at the sudden change in tone. "I'm sorry, Joy," he said carefully. "What exactly do you mean?" Joy leaned forward, eyes narrowed with sharp intent. "All this talk about redemption and second chances? It's lovely, sure. But let's address the elephant in the room. Your real past, Mark. Not the Hollywood, polished version." The studio felt colder somehow, as if someone had cracked a window and let in a winter draft. Audience members shifted uncomfortably. The other hosts stared down at their note cards, suddenly fascinated by blank paper. Mark's expression changed, subtly, but unmistakably. His friendliness cooled into measured composure. "Joy, I've been very open about my past," he said evenly. "I've never hidden from the mistakes I made when I was younger. I've spent years trying to be better. If there's something specific you want to bring up, I'm more than willing to address it." Joy scoffed loudly, waving a hand dismissively. "Oh, how convenient. You've been open about it. So that makes it all fine, right? A few charity donations, a good PR team, and suddenly we're all supposed to forget what you used to be." Whoopi stepped in, voice gentle but firm. "Joy, maybe we should?" "No, Whoopi," Joy snapped. "Let me finish." And with that, the situation tipped from tense conversation into something else entirely. Something volatile, unpredictable, and destined to become one of the most infamous interview clashes daytime television had ever aired. Joy snapped before anyone else on the panel could speak, her glare locked on Mark with unblinking intensity. "I'm tired of watching this network platform people who think they can just reinvent themselves and pretend their past doesn't matter," she said, her tone dripping with accusation. "Some of us remember who you really are, Mark Wahlberg." A collective gasp rippled through the audience as the camera zoomed in on Mark's face. His jaw tightened, the slightest flicker of the Boston tough guy flashing behind his eyes. The moment hung in the air like a lit fuse. But instead of blowing up, he did something no one, especially Joy, expected. He smiled. "Joy, I'm curious about something," Mark said, his voice low, steady, and dangerously calm. "What exactly are you trying to accomplish here?" Joy blinked, thrown off for half a second. Mark leaned forward. "Because if you want to have a real conversation about growth, accountability, redemption, great, I'm all in. But if you're just looking to attack me for your own entertainment," he shrugged lightly, "well, that says more about you than it does about me." Joy's face flushed a deep, furious red. She had been expecting a defensive apology or a temper-laced explosion, anything she could use to justify her hostility. Instead, Mark had turned the spotlight directly onto her behavior, and the discomfort on her face made it clear she hated the sudden reversal of power. "Don't you dare lecture me about what says what about who," she snapped. "I've been in this business longer than you've been relevant. I've seen enough fake Hollywood redemption stories to know the real thing from the performance." The studio was electric now, every second thick with tension. Even the camera operator seemed frozen in place, riveted by the live wire confrontation unfolding inches away. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably, looking like she wished she could vanish beneath the table, while Alyssa Farah Griffin stared at Joy in open disbelief. Mark sat back, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as he observed Joy becoming increasingly flustered. The audience could feel it, the shift, the imbalance, the unmistakable moment where the power dynamic swung in his favor. "You know what, Joy?" he said finally, his Boston accent creeping in. "You're absolutely right about one thing. You have been in this business a long time." The Joy straightened, ready to take the compliment. But Mark wasn't finished. "Long enough to know that attacking a guest for no reason other than your own personal issues isn't journalism. It's just bad television." Joy's mouth fell open, stunned. "Excuse me? Personal issues? I'm doing my job, asking the tough questions that matter." "Are you?" Mark shot back. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you came into this interview with an agenda that has nothing to do with my movie, my work, or anything the audience actually cares about. It seems personal, Joy, very personal." Whoopi frantically motioned to the producers off camera, clearly desperate to cut to commercial. But the show was live, and the moment had grown too big, too volatile, to interrupt cleanly. The ratings might have been skyrocketing, but what was happening on that stage was career-level carnage. "How dare you psychoanalyze me?" Joy snapped, her voice sharpening. "I don't have personal issues with you, Mark. I have professional concerns about this network giving platforms to people who don't deserve them." The Mark raised an eyebrow. "People who don't deserve them. Based on what criteria? Your personal opinion. Because last time I checked, the audience decides who they want to watch. Not you. The audience doesn't know what they need to know," Joy declared, her tone dripping condescension. "That's why we're here. To educate them. To show them the truth behind the Hollywood facade. The truth." Mark repeated, letting out a dark, humorless laugh. "You want to talk about truth? Fine. The truth is you've spent the last 5 minutes trying to humiliate me on live television for reasons you refuse to name. The truth is you're using your seat on this show to settle some imaginary score. That's the truth." Sarah finally managed to speak. "Maybe we should all take a step back." "No, Sarah?" Mark said, eyes still locked on Joy. "Let her finish. I want to hear what Joy's truth really is, because so far all I'm hearing is vague accusations and personal attacks dressed up as journalism." Joy's face was now nearly scarlet, her hands trembling slightly as she pointed directly at Mark, ready to fire back, but completely unaware she had already lost control of the room. "You want my truth?" Joy shot back, her voice quivering with fury. "Fine. My truth is that I am sick, absolutely sick, of watching privileged men like you get celebrated for doing the bare minimum required to be decent human beings. You made mistakes, you hurt people, and now you expect the world to applaud you for not being terrible anymore." The words hit the air like shrapnel. Mark didn't flinch. "I've never asked for applause," he replied, calm and steady. "All I've ever asked for is the chance to prove people can change, that they can grow, learn, and become better than their worst moments. But clearly, that's not something you believe in." "Oh, spare me the philosophy lesson," Joy snapped. "Some people don't deserve second chances. Some people don't get to just move on and pretend everything is fine." The studio went dead silent as the sentence crashed into the room. heavier than she intended and far more revealing. Even Joy seemed to realize she had crossed a line she couldn't walk back over. But the damage was already done. Mark's expression finally shifted. For the first time since the interview began, real anger flickered across his face. "Some people don't deserve second chances," he repeated slowly. "That's really what you believe. That's the message you want to send to millions of viewers. That redemption is impossible. That growth doesn't matter. That people should be defined forever by their worst mistakes." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Mark continued, his voice now sharpened with purpose. "Because if that's honestly your worldview, Joy, what does that say about you? About your mistakes, about your own need for forgiveness. Are you exempt from the human condition? Don't you turn this around on me." Joy protested, but her voice had lost its earlier force. She sounded rattled, cornered in her own argument. "I'm not turning anything around," Mark said firmly. "I'm simply pointing out the logical conclusion of your philosophy. If people can't change, if they shouldn't be allowed second chances, then that rule applies to everyone, doesn't it? Including you." Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to intervene. "I think what Joy is trying to say—" "No, Alyssa!" Mark cut in, his eyes still fixed on Joy. "Let her speak for herself. She's been perfectly clear about what she thinks of me. I'd like to hear her explain how her zero-tolerance, no-redemption worldview is supposed to function in the real world." Joy's confidence was visibly unraveling now. Her earlier fire had dimmed to a sputter. "That's not. I wasn't saying people can't change. I was saying some changes matter more than others." Mark raised an eyebrow, moving the goalpost now. "A minute ago, you said some people don't deserve second chances. Now we're talking about meaningful change. Which is it, Joy?" The audience was captivated, witnessing what felt like a masterclass in dismantling a hostile line of questioning. Mark hadn't raised his voice once, yet he had completely disarmed Joy and exposed the contradictions in her argument. "You're twisting my words," Joy accused weakly. "I'm repeating your words," Mark corrected, his voice unwavering. "Your exact words. And they reveal something pretty troubling about how you view human nature and the possibility of redemption. It makes me wonder what kind of person sits in judgment of others with such certainty, such finality." Whoopi made another desperate attempt to steer the conversation back to safety. "Okay, let's take a breath here and maybe talk about the movie." But Joy wasn't backing down. Her pride wouldn't let her retreat, even as the ground crumbled beneath her. "You know what, Mark?" she burst out. "You can sit there with your self-righteous attitude all you want, but some of us remember what you were really like. Some of us haven't forgotten." Mark's smile returned, cold this time, razor sharp. "Forgotten what, exactly, Joy?" he asked. "Because you keep making these vague references to my past without stating anything specific. If you have something to say, say it. If you have an accusation to make it. But stop hiding behind innuendo and implication." "I don't need to spell it out for you," Joy muttered, though the weakening in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Actually, you do," Mark replied. "Because right now you sound like someone attacking a guest based on rumors, gossip, and your own personal prejudices rather than anything resembling fact." The room held its breath. The audience leaned in, and Joy, red-faced, trembling, had nothing left to throw. The question landed with the precision of a blade. "Is that the kind of journalist you want to be known as?" For a moment, time in the studio seemed to halt. The words hung suspended above Joy like a sword, gleaming under the harsh studio lights, threatening to fall with devastating consequence. Every camera caught the subtle shifts in her expression, the tightening of her jaw, the flicker of panic in her eyes, the realization that she had been expertly cornered by someone she had clearly underestimated from the moment he walked onto the set. The audience, normally a lively presence, had fallen so silent that even the gentle hum of the air conditioning sounded thunderous. The tension was suffocating, wrapped tight around every person in the studio. "I am a respected journalist with decades of experience," Joy finally said through gritted teeth. Her voice, usually sharp and commanding, trembled almost imperceptibly. "I don't need to justify my questions to you or anyone else." Mark shook his head slowly, never breaking eye contact. "Joy, respectfully, what just happened here? That wasn't journalism. That was a personal attack dressed up as an interview. There's a difference. And deep down, I think you know that." That final phrase, "you know that," struck her like a slap. Joy rose abruptly from her chair, her face flushing a deep red born of anger, embarrassment, and something dangerously close to fear. "You want to see a personal attack?" she snapped, her voice cracking. "You sit there acting like you're some kind of saint, but we all know what you really are underneath that expensive suit." The other hosts looked horrified. Whoopi was frantically gesturing toward the producers off camera, silently begging for intervention. Sarah and Alyssa, stiff and pale, didn't dare move. Everyone could feel it. The unspoken boundaries of daytime television, once merely stretched, had now been violently torn apart. Mark remained unnervingly calm, as if her fury barely grazed him. "What am I, Joy?" he asked, his tone soft but unyielding. "Please, enlighten us. You're a thug," she spat. "A street thug who got lucky in Hollywood, and now thinks he can lecture the rest of us about redemption and second chances. You think putting on a nice suit and doing some charity work changes what you are at your core?" The gasp from the audience was instantaneous and unanimous. Even the camera operator hesitated, as though afraid to capture what was unfolding. But Mark didn't react with anger. Instead, he laughed, an honest, almost wary laugh, as if he pitied her more than he resented her. "Wow," he said softly. "You really went there." He shook his head, his expression filled not with rage, but with disappointment. "A thug. That's your professional assessment of someone you've never spent more than 5 minutes with outside the studio." Joy's breath came fast and shallow. Some part of her clearly recognized how far beyond the line she had leapt, yet she kept pushing forward, propelled by a mix of pride, panic, and old resentment. "I call it like I see it," she snapped. "Do you?" Mark asked quietly. "Because what I just saw was a host calling a guest a thug on national television based on nothing but prejudice and assumption. I saw someone so consumed with bitterness that they've forgotten what basic respect looks like. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me." Joy shot back, but her voice was breaking now, thin and frayed at the edges. "I'm not psychoanalyzing you," Mark replied. "I'm observing what you're doing right now, in front of millions of people. And I'm responding to your behavior, not your reputation." Whoopi finally intervened. "Joy, maybe you should sit down, and we can—" Joy suddenly screamed, whirling toward her co-host with wild, unrestrained fury. "I'm sick of this. I'm sick of pretending that people like him deserve our respect. I'm sick of this show." The words reverberated through the studio, harsh and irrevocable. Producers froze. Audience members stared, wide-eyed. Joy stood trembling, chest heaving, as the weight of what she had unleashed settled over the room like a storm cloud. And Mark, still seated, still composed, watched her with a look that was no longer amusement or pity, only sadness. A sadness that came from witnessing someone implode on live television. Not because they were attacked, but because they could not control the wounds they carried within themselves. "I'm sick of this network," Joy said, her voice trembling with fury. "And I'm sick of having to smile and be polite to people who don't deserve it." The studio erupted into chaos. Producers rushed onto the set, headsets crackling with frantic chatter. Audience members whispered in disbelief, clutching their seats as if bracing for impact. Sarah and Alyssa stared down at the table, pale and mortified, while Whoopi hovered in that unsettling space between shock and professional instinct. No one knew where to look or what to do next, and yet Mark remained perfectly still, calm, steady, watching Joy's unraveling with something that resembled concern rather than anger or triumph. His expression wasn't the smug satisfaction many might have expected. It was the sorrowful look of someone witnessing another human being self-destruct in real time. "Joy," he said quietly, his voice slicing cleanly through the commotion. "Look at yourself right now. Look at what you're doing. Is this really who you want to be?" For a moment, something in her tightened posture faltered. Joy blinked, taking in the scene around her, the horrified faces of her co-hosts, the stunned silence rippling through the audience, the cameras capturing every raw second of her implosion. For a heartbeat, she seemed to recognize the magnitude of the moment, the cliff she had just stepped off. But instead of stepping back, she leapt. "You know what?" she said, suddenly composed, almost eerily so. "You're right, Mark. This isn't who I want to be. I don't want to be someone forced to sit here and pretend to be nice to people I can't stand. I don't want to be part of a show that gives platforms to people I fundamentally disagree with." Then she turned directly to the camera, her gaze sharp and unbroken. "I've been on this show for years, and I have tried to bring real talk, real honesty, to daytime television. But apparently, that's not what this network wants. They want fake smiles, softball questions, celebrity pandering. Joy, let's just take a commercial break, Whoopi said urgently. No, Whoopi, Joy snapped. I'm done. She began removing her microphone, her hands trembling with adrenaline. I'm done pretending. I'm done being part of this charade. Mark rose partially from his chair as though he might help calm her, but paused, sensing that any wrong move might ignite another explosion. His voice was gentle, steady. Joy, you don't have to do this. We can have a real conversation about whatever's actually going on here. What's going on? Joy said sharply as she yanked the microphone cord free. Is that I've spent years trying to hold people accountable, and all I get in return is being told to be nicer, be more polite, be more accommodating to people who don't deserve it. She paused, staring directly at Mark. One final, blistering look. You want to know what I really think? I think you're all frauds, every single one of you, and I'm tired of being part of the fraud. With that, Joy Behar turned and stormed off the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned studio, a speechless audience, and co-hosts who looked like their souls were trying to exit their bodies. Cameras scrambled to cut to wide shots, then tight shots, then anything that wasn't the image of a decades-long television career going up in flames. Mark stood still for a long moment before slowly sinking back into his chair. He exhaled deeply, the weight of the moment settling over him. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. I'm really sorry about that. That wasn't how I wanted this to go. The Whoopi, steadying herself with the discipline of a veteran broadcaster, placed a hand on the table. Mark, that wasn't your fault. Sometimes television gets real in ways we don't expect. I just hope she's okay, Mark said sincerely. Whatever's going on with her personally, I hope she finds some peace. Despite everything, the show somehow continued. Mark answered questions about his movie with grace and composure, even as shock still pulsed through the room like electricity. The hosts did their best to hold it together, though everyone knew the show had just veered into television history, one of those moments that would be replayed, dissected, and mimed for years. When the segment finally ended, the narrator's voice overcaptured the magnitude of what had unfolded. And there you have it, one of the most shocking exits in television history. Joy Behar's attack on Mark Wahlberg backfired so dramatically that she ended her own career live on air. Let us know in the comments, did Joy go too far, or was she finally saying what others were afraid to?